For many of us, the International Annual Convention, or Jalsa Salana in UK, is a culmination of the best of the year, a spiritually uplifting and emotional experience. The reason for it all? The presence of Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih. For us, the Jalsa ends there, and we wait for the next shield. This was to be Hazur's second visit to the region. Previously, Hazur was here in 2006, his first stop, Singapore. What made his trip to Singapore even more spiritual than it would be was the fact that the Ahmadiyya Muslim communities in Malaysia and Indonesia have been violently persecuted for the past few years. Even the national authorities have given in to some demands of anti-Ahmadi religious extremists, and many activities of the community have been banned. Hazur coming to Singapore enabled these brave souls to see their Khalifa in person, rejuvenating their hopes and healing spiritual wounds. This meant that in over a week, Hazur spent a large portion of his time personally meeting more than 6,000 people from over 20 countries in the region who had come to meet their Khalifa. This love between the Khalifa and his beloved people was apparent in the emotional Friday sermon delivered by Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih. To mark Hazur's visit, a special reception was held in the heart of Singapore, which was attended by leading public figures, government officials, foreign ambassadors, and leading statesmen. Prior to the reception, Hazur was interviewed by members of the Indonesian press. In his keynote address, Hazur explained the basis for a just economy, the need for equity between nations, the misrepresentation of Islam, and his concerns of an increasing risk of a third world war. After a blessed 10 days in Singapore and bringing hope to thousands, Hazur departed for the next part of his journey to Australia. The Australian Ahmadiyya community is one of the earliest international communities established outside of India. The first Ahmadiyya mosque in Australia was set up in Sydney, called the Baitul Huda Mosque, which was to serve as the headquarters for the community. The arrival of Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih in Australia was the perfect opportunity to hold one of the key events in the Ahmadiyya calendar, the National Annual Convention, otherwise known as the Jalsa Salana. The convention was to be attended by more than 4,000 members of the community from in and around Australia, and it was to last 3 days. During the 3 days, Hazur would address both men and women and remind them of their duties towards one another, their children and their faith, and how all should live their lives in a manner which portrays. During his tour of Australia, Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih also visited Melbourne, the first time for a Khalifa to visit the city. Hazur personally met members of the community, inaugurated the Ahmadiyya Centre, a complex that can accommodate more than 2,000 people, visited the local attractions, and delivered a keynote address at a reception held in his honour, with over 2,000 people attending at Baitul Huda Mosque, the second time for a Khalifa al-Masih to lead Eid prayers from Sydney. Soon after, Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih visited the Ahmadiyya community in Brisbane and inaugurated Brisbane's first Ahmadiyya mosque, Baitul Masroor, capable of housing more than 2,000 people. A small reception was also held in celebration of the mosque opening, attended by a local community. Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih departed for New Zealand. Upon arrival in New Zealand, Hazur was welcomed by community members who numbered near 400 in Auckland. But what was perhaps the main highlight of Hazur's tour of New Zealand was his historic invitation to the sacred meeting place, Tauranga Waiwai, by the Maori king, Tuhitia Paki. Never before had a religious leader been invited to such a meeting. The occasion also marked the completion of the translation of the Holy Quran in Maori language, after an arduous 23 years of effort by Mr. Shakil Manu. After an exchange of gifts, the Maori king and Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih met personally, while members of the two communities met in the traditional Maori way, through Hongi. After the meeting, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih officially presented the king the Holy Quran with Maori translation.
Ki te whakarewa I te pukapuka tapu a te whakapono Muslim I roto I te reo Māori, anei ngā whakamahuki.
The meeting at the marae was one of significant importance and interest. This was the first time a religious leader was invited to the marae. The national media was there to cover the event, including Maori television, which did a special report on the event. Following the historic meeting with the Maori king, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih inaugurated New Zealand's annual convention, or Jalsa Salana, and New Zealand's first Ahmadiyya mosque, Baitul Muqeed, built next to the previous mission. Representatives from the government of New Zealand, academic circles, local neighbours, and the Maori community, including the Maori king and queen. Before his departure from New Zealand, Hazur attended another high-profile event, this time at the Parliament buildings in the capital, Wellington. Among the many guests attending were members of Parliament, foreign ambassadors, including Ambassador for Israel, Iran, Britain, and Cuba. Hazur delivered his keynote address, adding to his continued efforts of reaching out to world leaders, as he has done at the British Houses of Parliament, the US Capitol Hill, and the European. Hazur's last stop on his epic tour of the Far East was Japan. The majority of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community reside in the city of Nagoya, where Hazur spent most of his days. The highlight of Hazur's visit was the inauguration of a recently purchased building, which is to be converted into a large mosque for the Ahmadiyya community, which inshallah will make it the largest mosque of Japan. A large reception was also held in Nagoya, attended by more than 150 influential guests, some of whom spoke in great praise of the community in their humanitarian services during earthquakes and the recent tsunami, even outlining services of Chaudhry Zafrullah Khan Sahib towards Japan during his days in the United Nations, members of parliament, journalists, and corporate leaders. This gave many an opportunity to pose questions directly to Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, where he demystified many aspects of Islam and laid out some of the most beautiful teachings of the Holy Quran. Shortly before the end of his trip, during his visit to the famous Sensoji temple in the heart of Tokyo, Hazur very quickly became the center of attention, where nearly all visiting wished to meet Hazur and have a picture taken with him. This was reflective of his whole tour of the Far East. Wherever he went, Hazur attracted the faithful and the rest of the world. And it's not like there's a break in his work. Upon his return to the UK, Hazur addressed the Pan-African Ahmadiyya Association event, celebrating 50 years of independence of many African countries, attended by many members of the Ahmadiyya community of African origin, as well as representatives of many African governments from high commissions and embassies. In his keynote address, Hazur spoke of the need of African nations to put aside self-interest and to become united. Perhaps the most anticipated event to be attended by Hazrat Khalifatul Masih was the historic Conference of World Religions, organised by the UK Ahmadiyya Muslim community at Guildhall in London. The event was themed around the existence of God in the 21st century, and it was attended by representatives of major world religions, as well as 500 other guests consisting of politicians, academics, and NGOs. Hazur met some of the guests personally in brief meetings, many of whom addressed the congregation on their religious teachings, world peace, and the existence of God. Among the guests were Geshe Tashi Sereng, representing the Dalai Lama, Sheikh Muwafaq Tarif, head of the Druze community, Archbishop Kevin MacDonald, representing the Catholic Church, Rabbi Professor Daniel Sperber, representing the Chief Rabbi of Israel, Right Honourable Dominic Grieve MP, and Professor Kwaku Dansub-Wafu, High Commissioner of Ghana, reading a message from the President of Ghana. Khilafat, the various auxiliary organizations of the community often receive the blessing of direct guidance from Hazrat Amir al-Mu'mineen. One of these organizations is the International Association of Ahmadiyya Architects and Engineers, an international body of Ahmadi professionals who, as a charity, give up their personal time and wealth and are responsible for building model villages in different parts of Africa, as well as rehabilitating water pumps in some of the most remote regions, and working with other charities to build schools, training centers, installing solar-powered street lighting, and building mosques and Jamaat buildings around the world. Another international body working under Hazrat Khalifatul Masih is MTA International, who were also fortunate enough to be addressed by Hazrat Khalifatul Masih at the 3rd International MTA Conference, attended by representatives from more than 18 countries. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih is not only a voice for guidance, but a practical example. During the Khudam Ijtima UK, a 3-day event dedicated to the spiritual, mental and physical development of the youth of the community, Hazur spent his time among the youth, and on the final day took their pledge of allegiance to Khilafat, their loyalty towards their country, their affirmation of duty toward the community and mankind, after which the address was telecast live on MTA. It has been 125 years. 125 years of witnessing divine miracles and help of God through the prophethood of the promised Messiah ﷺ. And then a continuation of that blessing over 100 years through Khilafat. To celebrate and mark the occasion of 125 years since the founding of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, and under guidance from Hazur, a series of programs were broadcast in Arabic on MTA, direct from the birthplace of Ahmadiyya, Qadian, in India. In the previous year, Hazur's only other tour of a country was his tour of Germany, which included the famous Jalsa Salana of Germany. In the 2-week tour, which included opening and foundation stone laying for mosques around Germany, Hazur addressed the Jalsa gathering on all 3 days. Hazur's addresses included the Friday sermon of Jalsa, Hazur also delivered special dars, or commentary of the last chapters of the Holy Quran, delivered live on the last day of Ramadan, as well as an Eid sermon the next day. During the year, Hazur inaugurated many mosques and laid the foundation stones for some around the world, among which were the In Germany, Hazur inaugurated the Darul Aman Mosque in Friedberg, the Al-Mahdi Mosque in Munich, the foundation stone laying for Mubarak Mosque in Wiesbaden, and the foundation stone laying for Sadiq Mosque in Carbon. At each event, Hazur addressed the local Ahmadiyya community on their duties and responsibilities towards their creator, their mosque and their local neighboring community. All events were attended by in his continued pursuit of developing conscious, responsible and caring youth. Hazur held more than 40 classes with Waqfin al-Khudam and Lajna, as well as university and college students around the world, guiding them on various matters and receiving updates from them on their future plans and education. Every single Friday, we were fortunate to receive a fountain of blessings through live Friday sermons by Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, no matter where he was. Among the various interviews and news coverage of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, especially during current world events, was a special report by British broadcaster ITV and BBC Radio Asian Network and World Service, both covering stories on the current state of Muslims and the concept of Khilafat in Islam. How fortunate are Ahmadi Muslims around the world that in any situation, in times of happiness or distress, in their homelands or through their TV sets, a man has been designated by God to look after them. A man they hold dearer than all loved possessions. A man who clearly loves them back with complete devotion. This is Islam in its pristine purity. Khilafat that loves all. Khilafat that hates none.
To listen to a leader who walks the world stage talking about the importance of tolerance, of faith and peace. We need more leaders like that now on the world stage.
What His Holiness spoke about as far as Syria is concerned is of world importance, and fortunately there's someone like him to say it to world leaders, to politicians, to get their attention, because someone has to get their attention. He lives it. It's inspirational.
A person of true leadership. I only saw him for a few minutes, but I was instantly impressed, as I say, by the sort of the genuineness of the charm that he radiates.
If you